Hello everyone and welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. We're continuing the Eurocorps unit comparisons here into the tank tab, starting off with everyone's favorite super heavies. And we do have one option from West Germany, one option from France with the 2A5 and the Leclerc, which are, for 5 points different, I think very different tanks. Bikefish, do you want to talk a little bit about each of these super heavies, when you might decide to take one, the other, or maybe even both, even in a general deck?
Yeah, so when it comes to the EC tank tab, really one of the primary choices you're making in designing your tank tab is, do you want to run double super heavy or not? Um, Eurocore is one of the places where we probably have the most diverse pair of super heavies. Pretty much everywhere else, you're either doubling up on 2A5s or you have things that behave broadly similar in the grand scheme of things, like the TADUM versus BU. I'm going to get roasted for that one, but I am a terrible USSR player, so they look mostly the same to me on paper.
Four top armor is the difference that I've been reliably
Yes.
informed is important there, but that's not an option
Yes,
here.
it
Both of
is.
these are 3. What does stick out to me, though, is 22 frontal armor versus 21, and then the gun as well, 23 versus 22, although the much higher rate of fire on the Leclerc.
So the rate of fire thing is actually good because this is a great opportunity to inform all of your viewers that they have been being lied to by the Wargame Armory tool for quite some time. Um, the rate of fire that's mentioned here, it doesn't note a couple of key things. The first of which is it does not note whether we have an auto loader or not. The second thing is it notes the cyclic rate of fire. The cyclic rate of fire thing doesn't come into play here, but it will be an important distinction for later on. So comment if you remember me saying this in the video where it becomes appropriate that it's cyclic rate of fire.
Ooh, and by the
Um,
way, I haven't said it yet. Like, share, subscribe, all that YouTuber nonsense. I had to fit it in once along this course. It's the only time, but people love super heavies, so there it is. And you want to keep going on.
yeah. So the armory tool, or the armory as presented here, does not note whether a unit has an auto loader or not. The Leclerc possesses an auto loader. So this 12 RPM that you see here does not degrade as the tank's morale state degrades throughout an engagement, or if somebody's shooting at it with artillery, or it's just been hit by an airplane, stuff of that nature. It's always going to shoot at 12 RPM. That means in a duel with another tank, the only time the Leclerc is not going to get the second shot off first is if you're fighting a Kyumaru Shiki or another Leclerc. And there's a reason why that's really important, and I will hand it over to you for that nice segue.
Oh, okay. So, wait, what am I supposed to segue into?
Okay, the reason why it's important that you get the second shot off first is when it does come to AP power, we have that kinetic energy scaling that takes place. Your gun becomes more effective as you get closer range up to a cap of 30 AP. A double shot from 30 AP will kill any tank in the game frontally aside from the Challenger 2. So being able to get that second shot off first very consistently because you have that autoloader with the Leclerc makes it a very, very strong unit that kind of helps it overcome some of the disadvantages you may see in the paper stat difference between the 2A and the 2A5.
And the other thing I do want to note there, now that I'm not given a proper segue, is the high stabilizer on the Leclerc, 70%, particularly when compared to a lot of Red 4 tanks. And I mean, the one that comes to mind is the Moderna with just abysmal accuracy across the board. This is a tank that can definitely fight while moving toward or even away from your target, and that moving toward in particular will get you better range scaling on the second shot, although it is an aggressive and risky way to play with your super heavies. So it sounds like you're leaning pretty hard Leclerc here. Is there ever a reason to take just the 2A5 instead?
In my experience, not really. What the 2A5 is better at than the Leclerc is going toe to toe with another super heavy. What the Leclerc is really good at doing is punching down at lesser tanks very effectively while also requiring a little bit of setup but still being effective against a super heavy.
Gotcha. And,
So
and the
if you're
example, just to expand on that, the example that comes to mind, a Leclerc versus, let's say you're going against USA and you run into the big boy Abrams at 180 points, I'm scared at that point if I'm running the Leclerc. But if you're running the Leclerc and you run into 2A1s, I mean, that's 22 AP power minimum against 16 frontal armor with a high auto-loaded rate of fire. That's going to kill a 2A1 so quick. It's going to kill an M84A so quick. It's sort of incredible there. So that's sort of the example of what Bikefish was just saying with the differences for punching down versus punching sideways.
So, if to kind of wrap this conversation up, if you are going to run a single card of super heavy, it should be the Leclerc. If you're going to run a double super heavy setup, Upvet Leclerc is a really fun way to play because you get this tank that is auto loaded, comes at veteran, very consistent, very funny crit machine because of that higher veterancy. And then in the event your opponent is calling out super heavies and trying to have that more traditional tank engagement, you still have a pair of 2A5s to fall back on.
Also keep in mind, units upvet through a myriad of ways, including taking and recovering from morale damage, but also getting kills. And the Leclerc at 165 is usually going to upvet whenever it kills another super heavy. So for example, it kills a 2A5, it kills 170 points worth of stuff. That Leclerc is going to go, if you have it upvetted already to veteran, it's going to pop up to elite. And at that point, it's truly terrifying to have to deal with taking fire from. So that sounds like the recommendation. If you're going to take two down vet 2A5, one up vet Leclerc. If you're just going to run one, take two down vetted Leclerc. That way you're not just relying on a single super heavy, you still do have two. And when it upvets, it'll become that much more deadly. So we're going to be back in the tank tab again tomorrow, looking at some of your other options, the rest of the Leopard line, as well as potentially even the AMX-10 RCSB either tomorrow or the day after. Stick around, we'll have a lot more content for you.